Hi everyone, this is Janvi
And that's Raksha.
and we are from the podcast committee.
Today we're collaborating with the Animal Rights Wing, part of the Go Green Club.
In the back we have Nidhi, Danush and Shankar.
And let's not forget the very adorable dogs, Mickey and Minnie.
Hey everyone, we're immensely proud to announce that the Go Green Club of Ramaya College of Law has a new vertical, the Animal Rights Wing. I'm Nidhi,
I'm Danush.
I'm Shankar.
and the reason that we've started this initiative is that we're all passionate about animals and we're animal lovers. But even though we've contributed to the cause of protecting animals in our own small ways, we feel that it's important for us to come together and lend our voice to these sentient beings. Every day we hear or see some instances of cruelty and unnecessary pain that's been inflicted on these animals. But we find that even though we're able to feel their pain, we're in a helpless position and we're not able to protect them in any way. Which is why our aim is to sensitize and educate people on the cruelty that these animals face and also empower them to better advocate the rights of animals. We find that what we need is a change at the fundamental level. And given the scale of animal suffering, we feel that legislative reforms is the best course of intervention to better protect the rights of animals. Moreover, what we've observed is that people often view animals not from a lens of empathy, but rather they see animals as objects which are servient to us and which exist solely to satisfy our needs. Which is why, above all, our main objective is to instill compassion in each and every single person towards animals and also create a world where the rights of animals are considered as equally important as the rights of humans.
So, as an inaugural step, the Animal Rights Wing, in synergy with the RCL Podcast Committee, is honored to have as our guest renowned animal rights advocate, Mr. Ashar, who will be engaging us in an enriching discussion and enlightening us on animal cruelty, the laws protecting animals, and the lacuna on the same.
Before we welcome our guest, let's get to know a little bit about his work.
Meet is a lawyer and an animal rights advocate who has a demonstrated experience of over 12 years working in the field of animal abuse and cruelty, as well as law and policy matters concerning animals. He's also a part-time law professor and a principal resource person cum lecturer in the program on animal protection laws, which is actually a one-of-its-kind program that's offered by VPM TMC's Law College. He's also skilled in imparting training on animal protection laws as well as the enforcement of these laws. And he's also at the forefront of the initiative to strengthen the redundant and age-old animal protection laws of India by working with influencers, celebrities, as well as the government to amend and strengthen the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act. He's also a familiar face on national television, Sony TV's Kaun Banega Crorepati, together with actor, producer, and a very vocal voice for animals, Mr. John Abraham.
He is also a professional with a graduate in law from the University of Mumbai, a postgraduate diploma in environmental law and policy from the National University of Delhi, an accounting technician degree from the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, and a graduate in commerce from the University of Mumbai.
He is also the youngest to have been appointed as an honorary animal welfare officer in Maharashtra and India. He has been awarded the prestigious Mumbai Mary John Vocational Service Award by Rotary Club of Bombay and the Vocational Excellence Award by Rotary Club of Thane for his work in the field of animal rights. Currently working with animal rights organization PETA India as manager of cruelty response projects, he is also an advisor to the Maharashtra Animal Welfare Board, a statutory body of the government of Maharashtra.
Sir, it is truly an honor to have you here with us. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to come and interact with us.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Before we delve into the subject of our discussion today, sir, we were very curious about your personal journey and what got you started on this cause. We find that many law students after graduation, they get into litigation or they get firms that they get corporate jobs, and we find that even their goals during law school is only limited to mainstream areas of law. So what we were wondering is what actually drove you to pursue a career in this niche area of law, and was there any particular instance that motivated you to fight for this cause?
Yes, thank you for this question. So basically, handling cases of animal cruelty and abuse for the past so many years now, over a decade, I realized the lack of lawyers that are conversant with animal protection laws, who understand animal protection laws and how they need to be enforced. And when I say enforced, it does not only mean through police or the law enforcement agency like the forest department, but also how to see the case through till the end. A lot of us register first information reports with the police, but we have no idea as to what happens to the case. We don't see it to its logical end. That was one reason where I was struggling. So the FIRs that I had personally registered in cases of animal cruelty that were reported to me, I started following up on them, and I was finding it very difficult because at that time I did not have the knowledge of law as to how courts function and how a trial takes place, so on and so forth. And I was really looking forward to some legal help from lawyers in this matter. And when I did not get the support that I was expecting, I thought it is better to study law myself, and rather than depending on someone. So yeah.
So it's very inspiring how just for this cause you decided to study law just to be able to help animals, and it's definitely so motivating that the way that you were able to forge or rather chart your path in this career.
Thank you.
Sir, I had another question. How old were you when you first started to take up these cases?
So I was 17 years old when I registered my first, complaint, which resulted into an FIR in a case of animal cruelty where a dog was purposely run over by a person. And the dog got paralyzed, and in a day or two, the dog passed away because of, internal bleeding leading to cardiac arrest and thereby death. So that was my first case of animal cruelty, which I was, and this is this I kept following up for, if I can correctly remember, for 5 years till I was 22, and that is when there were other cases along with this, but this was something that you do for the first time. You strike a different chord with it. So the kind of attachment or the kind of feeling that I had for that case, and the feeling of helplessness to not be able to get justice for that dog even after 5 years had passed. The trial was on, things were happening. I'm not saying nothing was happening, but it was not happening in a time bound manner. So I was just trying to find my way through the system, and I was feeling quite lost. So yeah, that is exactly when I decided to pursue law. Actually, I joined PETA, and after that I decided to pursue law, and it was difficult, but I think it was totally worth all the effort and sacrifice, because it's difficult to manage a full-time degree when you're working. So yeah,
I think it's quite amazing, sir, that you started off at such a young age. And I think we all at this point aspire to be like you. So coming on to the next question, as we know that India is a country that's famous for animal worship as a part of its culture. Animals like cows, tigers, and lions and monkeys, they're all believed to have a cultural connotation that binds various religions together in India. But despite this, we see that the number and severity of animal abuse and cruelty is shocking. So I heard about this case where an elephant was fed a pineapple which had an explosive in it, and Bruno, the black Labrador, was beaten to death and then hung onto a hook. And in another case, a street dog was tied to a scooter and then dragged around. So we see that these instances, they're just the tip of the iceberg. And many people may even be aware that the Indian Constitution directs the protection of these voiceless creatures. So we wanted to know what these laws are in the Constitution and how they come to the protection of the voiceless creatures.
So, Article 51AG of the Constitution of India makes it a fundamental duty of every responsible citizen to have compassion for living creatures, which at the very least means not to harm them. You can obviously do more, but the very basic thing to do is to not harm them, which is the duty of every citizen of this country. However, we see a lot of people who commit animal cruelty failing in this duty. What you have mentioned are heinous cases of animal abuse. But if we were to talk about even Article 51AH, which talks about developing scientific temper and humanism, the Supreme Court in Animal Welfare Board of India versus A. Nagaraj and others has elaborated on this and said that developing a scientific spirit and a spirit of humanism means having compassion, means having empathy for those who cannot defend themselves, which are animals. So before we go on to these heinous cases of animal cruelty and abuse, which are totally criminal acts and perpetrators who deserve to be brought to justice, but people across the country, I'm not saying all of them, but some of them definitely are violating Article 51 AG every single day. Housing societies trying to get rid of stray or community animals, torturing them, asking security guards to hit them, shoo them away, not allowing feeders to feed animals responsibly, poisoning these animals, making attempts to relocate them. These are instances which happen every single day across the country. And I think as citizens of this country, when we take pride in being Indians, we must also take pride in a very important virtue of Indian culture, which is ahimsa, irrespective of the religion that you may belong to. So it is extremely important that all of us, whether we love animals or not, we must exhibit this virtue of ahimsa and be true to our constitution by following it in letter and spirit, including Article 51 AG and H. So yes, meaning animal cruelty is something which happens in small ways and big ways. But to begin with, we must at least start with addressing smaller instances of animal cruelty. And I think it is about being tolerant. As we are advancing, becoming more and more modern, having more technology access, developing in every which way possible, we are becoming less and less tolerant. Yes, thanks to technology, cases of animal cruelty are being reported. Maybe they were not reported earlier because of lack of medium, communication, etc., etc. But I also feel that we also need to learn to become more tolerant and have the spirit of coexistence with animals. There are minute things like say for example, a cat killing a rat in a housing society, and somebody not liking the sight of a dead rat, meaning your liking or not liking something cannot be over the life of an animal, where you think that okay, you need to get rid of this cat because you don't like seeing there was one occasion where you saw the cat bringing a dead rat and you didn't like it, and hence this cat needs to go. Meaning I think we all need a reality check that this planet does not just belong to us, but to everybody else also. And we need to be a little more tolerant. Those animals are not entering your house. If we start with basics, I'm sure there will be a drastic reduction in the number of serious crimes towards animals. Because only when these small or minor, things go unchecked, do they volcano into something which becomes very big at a later stage, because it does not go checked. So sorry for the long explanation, but I think this was necessary.
No, not at all, sir. In fact, I really like the point that you made. It's not necessary for us to love animals or nurture them, but as long as we don't go out of our way to harm them and allow them to just coexist with us peacefully, that's all we're asking for.
And speaking about tolerance, sir, I really think it should be taught in every household and every school from when the kids are young, so that they inculcate these values as they grow older. I think that's the only way we can
Absolutely.
get people.
So before moving to the areas of cruelty, I think it's important to know the definition of animal cruelty under the legislation. So, generally speaking, cruelty can be defined as the infliction of unnecessary pain or suffering towards animals. And we can notice that animals are subject to cruelty in various areas. So, to name a few, farmed animals undergo systemic exploitation for their meat. Domestic animals undergo cruelty in the form of lack of adequate care and physical abuse. Wild animals are subject to hunting, and they're hunted for sport, and their natural habitats being encroached and degraded. So, amongst all these areas of cruelty, the meat and dairy industry are major contributors. So could you tell us about the systemic exploitation of the animals in these industries and the cruelty inflicted on them?
Like you rightly mentioned, Section 11, subsection 1 defines what animal cruelty is, or rather acts which are considered as cruelty to animals under the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act 1960. What the act mentions, which I feel is a lacune in the legislation, is it says unnecessary pain and suffering. So I come to the question, what is necessary pain and suffering? What pain and suffering could be construed as necessary? Just to subserve some purpose for humans, could we consider any pain or suffering to be necessary? That is something that, is a policy issue which the government in times to come will have to address. And I'm hoping that it will be, a legislation which will be ahead of times and not something which, we have currently, which is an age-old redundant law which allows certain practices which in today's day and age one cannot even think of. So coming back to the question that you asked about the systemic exploitation of milch animals or animals in the dairy industry, animal agriculture is one of the most or highly unregulated, or rather the only unregulated industry in this country in terms of law. There are no laws whatsoever that regulate the industry when it comes to dairy or meat or poultry, meaning, yeah, there are laws, but are they sufficient to serve as a deterrent? Answer is no. So when it comes to, the animals that are, like, for example, if you see tabelas or cattle farms or milk farms in your neighborhood, the way cattle are kept, they are constantly chained and, relegated to the tabela or the cattle shed, whatever you want to refer to it as. And that is where they spend their entire life. And when I say entire life, meaning a life of 5 to 7 years till they are of age that they can get pregnant and give milk. Once that period is over, once they become dry, which means they cannot give milk and they cannot get pregnant, they are either abandoned or sold to a slaughterhouse. And there aren't enough checks and balances in place to ensure that these acts are criminalized, and criminalized to an extent where it serves a deterrent. Unfortunately, we see sympathies, not lying with animals, because stray animals are considered as nuisance. We see even, constitutional courts like high courts taking cognizance of stray animal menace or stray cattle menace, and not really getting to the depth of the problem. You're just trying to tell the government or the municipal corporation or the local bodies to pick up the stray cattle and put them in a gaushala. But this is a perennial problem. This will not be addressed unless abandonment of cattle from the dairy industry is addressed. And this is something which most high courts, unfortunately, have failed to recognize. They have not even gone to the depth of the problem. They go into the issues of accidents that are caused by cattle, but we must also remember that cattle also die in these accidents. It's not that they survive and humans, are the unfortunate victims. It is sad what happens. I'm not saying that, my sympathies don't lie with human victims. They definitely do. This is something which is totally avoidable. And I think we as individuals need to contribute to the problem solving by not consuming dairy, by not being a part of this problem. We can always blame the system, the government, the administration. But what are we going to do as individuals to not be a part of the problem? So, yeah, I hope that answers your question. But if you have a follow-up question on that, I'd be happy to answer.
Yeah, so sure. We do have a follow-up question. So can you just tell us about any instances or cases that you filed pertaining to the cruelty in the dairy and meat industries? And did the laws regulating factory farming and dairy industry come to the aid of these animals in fighting these cases?
Yeah, so there is so while we speak of the negative, we must also speak of the positive. So, for example, Section 12 of the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act makes it a punishable offense, a cognizable and a punishable offense, to subject any animal to any technique or any method which is for increasing production of milk. The act says fuka or doomdev, which also means administration of oxytocin, a prohibited drug or a Schedule H drug, which can be used only in case of humans, that also under prescription of a human medical practitioner. However, oxytocin is widely available in lot of not only veterinary medical shops, but in other common shops as well. And it is regularly administered in almost all dairy farms or tabelas. And I have had the occasion to deal with one of such case where we had caught the use of oxytocin with the police being present. Samples were taken by the drug inspector, and those cattle were seized, and they were dealt with in accordance with law. An FIR came to be registered under Section 12 of the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act. So while there are certain things, but what I want to say is that while this is a positive thing, checks and balances are not sufficient, the ones that are there in place. While there is this provision in the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act, there is not enough infrastructure in place to keep a check. Even today, even despite these cases being registered by activists, there are still instances. You guys are from Bangalore, is that correct? So you go in Bangalore, in your own city, in any dairy farm, in any tabela, you will not come back without seeing that there is a glass bottle through which he's filling the syringe and injecting the cow or the buffalo with that just before milking. At least twice a day it will happen, morning and evening, before milking the animal, just 5, 7, 10 minutes before milking. So despite there being a law, implementation is what is lacking. So sometimes it is not the law that is not there, but it is the implementation of the law which is what is lacking. And I feel that when the system fails animals, we must come to their rescue as responsible individuals. Unless we report crimes, how are authorities to know that they are taking place? It is very easy to say, oh, this dairy farm is near a police station. How come they have not taken cognizance? Maybe the police is not even aware that such a technique or such a methodology is adopted by the dairy industry. So as citizens who are aware, we must do our bit. We must at least take care of such issues in our own area, which will make the lives of animals so much better.
Yes, sir. And as you spoke about oxytocin, I remember that they administer this method thinking that it's actually going to increase the production of milk from the cow. But actually what it does is that the milk that's stored for the calf is forced to be released, and that causes so much pain to the cow, which is equivalent to the pain that a mother feels during labor. And it's disheartening to see that these methodologies are adopted. And like you said, rather than pointing fingers at the government or the system, we need to step in, be more responsible, and protect these animals by stopping the dairy consumption. So coming to another important
Sorry, if I can just respond to that question. He also asked about meat industry, right? So despite there being a cattle slaughter prohibition law in some of the states in our country, Uh, Cattle are still slaughtered illegally, in places. Sometimes the administration or the police are aware. In most cases, they are not. So there was an occasion, probably when I was 18 or 19, I don't remember very clearly, but where we had intercepted a truck which was carrying beef. Uh, and it was about 700 kgs of beef that the truck was carrying. It was illegally slaughtered cow meat. And in that case, we had registered, a complaint with the police, and the police then registered an FIR against those persons. So thankfully, certain states like Maharashtra, Karnataka, Gujarat, etc., have cattle slaughter prohibition laws. But with a cattle slaughter prohibition law being in place, we also need a system in place to ensure that these cattle are not abandoned on streets and are forced to survive by foraging on garbage and consuming plastic accidentally, which leads to an equally horrible and horrifying death. But I think the problem would be addressed if we stop consuming dairy, meaning that's much more easier to do than to expect the government to build a gaushala or to build, shelters for these cow and buffaloes. Because how many shelters will you build? Land is limited. With the increase in consumption of dairy or meat, more and more land will be required for these dry cattle. And in cities like Mumbai, Bangalore, Delhi, Chennai, other metro cities, there is no land. There is no land for humans to live. So is it realistic to expect the government to build shelters and gaushalas, etc.? It is all very well to say that, oh, the government must do this. But it is so much easier to stop consuming dairy and not contribute to the problem. Automatically, if people stop consuming dairy, the demand will reduce. Thereby, the number of cattle that are brought into the dairy industry every year will reduce, which will reduce the abandonment once they go dry. So I think it's a circle that we fail to see. And once we see how it operates, it will be much easier for us to make right decisions in this direction.
Coming to another important area, which I think many people might be aware of, is that animals are used as subjects in clinical experimentations and testing by pharmaceutical industries, cosmetic industries, academic institutions like medical schools, and even military establishments. And the animals that are most commonly used are rodents, cats, frogs, sheep, rabbits, and especially dogs, which are mainly used for toxicity testing because their DNA is quite similar to that of humans. In fact, many of us might even be aware of the social media movement by the name of Freegals, who actually work towards rescuing and rehabilitating beagles, which is one such breed of dog that is commonly used for testing because of its small size and its docile nature. So we've read that there are several governments across the world which actually mandate testing of products on animals before they can even be declared fit for the use of human beings. So this made us wonder, what is the legal status of testing on animals in India?
Animal testing in India, as far as cosmetics are concerned, is totally prohibited. And it is a progressive decision that the Indian government has taken, which must be lauded. Unfortunately, certain countries like China and other countries still require testing of animals on even products like cosmetics, without which the products are not allowed to be sold in that country. We hope that those countries will also take cue from countries like India and other countries which have prohibited the testing of animals on cosmetics. However, there is more that needs to be done in this area, because a lot of testing on animals in medical research takes place for procedures or for things which are not something which will yield result for human welfare or for human benefit. For example, there was a test called forced swim test, which mice were subjected to, or rats. They would be, put into a container full of water, and the researchers would conclude that the rats which did not make enough attempt to swim were depressed and wanted to die. And based on that, they were trying to make, or create a medicine for depression, which is something which is so horribly wrong. Meaning, how can you even compare a rat's anatomy, a rat's mind to that of a human? And how silly is it to conclude that because you are comparing, say, 10 mice, you think 5 of them, according to you, based on your comparison, which is so subjective, that they did not make enough effort to swim, so they have drowned and died, in today's day and age is absolutely unnecessary. Thankfully, with PETA's intervention, the forced swim test has been stopped, has been prohibited. But there are still many such, tests or experiments, etc., that animals are subjected to, which are unnecessary, which can be replaced with non-animal methods.
So, is there any way in which we can actually balance the interest of animals on one hand and also utilize them for the advancement of research, like some of these countries are doing?
So, according to me, use of animals for any purpose is not something that I am in favor of. So, if you ask me personally, my answer would be no, because animals are not here for us. Rather, they came to this planet before us. So, what if we were to think they were to, have this entitlement and think, oh, let's try an experiment on humans because they have come after us. And let us see how we can make our lives better by experimenting on humans. How horrible we would feel. It is again about us giving ourselves a sense of entitlement that only we are here to survive, and everything else, even nature, everything that exists on this planet is here for a purpose, which is to serve humans. If it does not serve a purpose to humans, it is no good for us. And this mindset of speciesism needs to stop. It's high time. Our ancestors have made that mistake. It's time to undo that. And the least we can do is stop such things and not have this kind of mentality where we want to try and use animals and balance their welfare. I think once you talk about using animals, there is no welfare that will be, no real welfare that is going to happen, because you are keeping them for a purpose. You will still be restraining them, confining them to cages, to whatever. You will still be subjecting them to certain things which they are not naturally supposed to, be subjected to. It's like saying an ethical breeder. An ethical breeder, there is no such thing such as an ethical breeder. Because once you treat it as business, as a source of earning money, you try to make more and more profit. You try to monetize it more and more. And in an attempt to do so, you will compromise the welfare. There is no doubt about it.
Yes, so we've read about the cruelty that these animals under testing go through, especially during toxicity testing, where the poison is fed to them, it's either injected or goes straight to their stomach. And I think one thing that we as people can do is purchase cruelty-free products and also encourage others to purchase cruelty-free products. So at least we're able to send a message that we need to stop testing on animals because we're not entitled to do that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And see, the movement is getting stronger and stronger. You're seeing companies like Dove, which at one point of time was testing on animals, Garnier, and many other companies who were testing on animals, who have now completely stopped animal testing. Rather, Dove has even got the PETA certification of, not tested on animals. So, it is us as consumers. We decide what, comes to the table. So if you choose correctly, ethically, morally, you make a choice not only for yourself, but also it has an impact, a bearing on the lives of those animals. With Peter constantly trying to tell Dove that they need to stop animal testing, with more and more people signing the petition to Dove, Dove realized that they must stop, or else all these people are never going to purchase products from Dove or those other companies. And they have taken a step in the right direction. They have done something which is progressive, and we must applaud that. And we hope other companies that are still testing on animals, maybe not in India, but are conducting those experiments in countries outside India, or are outsourcing. So certain companies very smartly on their website would say, we don't do animal testing, but they will outsource the animal testing part to a third agency and they will pay for it. That is still, the money is still going there, and that needs to stop. So you can just simply Google if X brand is cruelty free, and you would immediately get links to sites which will explain whether those brands are cruelty free or not.
Sir, I'm sure all of us would have heard of this Pavlov's dog experiment where he used to ring the bell and the dog used to salivate. I think what many people don't understand is there's cruelty involved even there, where I'm sure he would have starved the dog for it to have to salivate every time it saw food. So we were wondering whether it was possible to do away with clinical testing completely.
Unfortunately, that is not a question that I will be able to answer because I'm not from the science background. So I would not want to claim that I know it all and answer something which I'm not conversant with. But hopefully somebody from PETA's science team can answer that question. So if you want to get that done, I'll put you in touch with our science policy team, and all questions regarding animal experimentation, they'll be the best people to answer. Rather, if you would have seen a recent blog or a news article which has come up in the news about hundreds of white mice being rescued by PETA from a facility in Puducherry, a medical facility, I think Jawaharlal Nehru, something. I don't remember the entire name. Jimper is the short form, JIMPER. So it's in Puducherry, and they were illegally using these white mice for certain kind of experimentation. And somebody brought it to our attention, and immediately our science team sprung into action, and these mice came to be rescued. So you can ask them. I'll put you in touch with them, and you can ask them all questions pertaining to animal experimentation.
So moving on, we see that a lot of animals like horses, birds, dogs, and cats, they're used in these films, serials, and ads. And apart from the large scale use of these animals for entertainment, on a smaller scale, we also see people using animals like snakes and monkeys to perform tricks and entertain live crowds. And recently, this movie called Charlie 777 came out, and this was received well by audiences all over the country. And it also had an important message about adoption and why we shouldn't abandon animals. So we were just curious about how these animals are taken care of on the sets of these films.
So first of all, let me begin by saying that the Animal Welfare Board of India, a statutory body of the Government of India, and a body which issues permits for use of animals in films under the Performing Animals Registration Rules of 2001, this very body has issued an advisory to all production houses saying that they must use VFX, right? Or use CG, that is computer graphic imagery, special effects, VFX, CGI, etc., and not use live animals. Replace use of live animals with CGI. This is something which has come from the Animal Welfare Board of India themselves in an advisory issued very recently. So I think that speaks volumes of the need for industries, whether it is Bollywood, Tollywood, whatever, whichever arena of, or whichever area, whichever state is basically into this, they need to move to computer graphics imagery or VFX or things like that, because it is not natural for animals to act, to do certain things which humans will expect them to do. And hence, use of animals must be avoided at all costs. After all, that movie is for our entertainment. And PETA strongly believes that, or rather, is a virtue or a motto that PETA functions on, which is animals are not ours to use for entertainment. So, while it may be to send a good message, we are sure it can be done through other means by not actually using, a live animal. Rather, there was a news article about 777 Charlie. I'm not sure if you guys have seen, which said that the demand for Labrador puppies has exponentially risen after the release of this movie. So while the message that the movie may want to send may be very positive, worth being applauded, but there is collateral damage that has happened because of the breed that has been used. People are not looking at the bond, the love and connection between a dog and a human. They are thinking that it is this Labrador breed only specifically which will have this bond or this love towards humans. So I have not watched the movie, so I cannot say for myself as to what kind of things the dog has done and whether it is natural for the dog to do those things or not. However, the use of a specific breed is something which is dangerous, because it will lead to impulse buying of Labrador puppies or Labrador dogs, and equally faster abandonment once people realize that how much of a commitment it takes to raise an animal just like you raise a child, and that they are not something which is a toy, but they are a 20-year commitment. So I think in general, use of animals in films must stop. I cannot name the movie, but I have been part of inspection team constituted by the Animal Welfare Board of India, and I have seen the condition of animals or the way they are treated or the kind of unhealthy animals that are brought to the sets of the film, and nobody gives a damn about it. Nobody is even concerned as to what are the kind of animals, what is the health of these animals. Are they even okay to walk? Forget do X or Y or Z, which may be a scene in the movie. So use of animals in films is something which is, animals are exploited for, is what I could say, based on my experience.
So, since these animals continue to be used in movies in spite of the fact that we have CGI and VFX, is there any way that we can actually oversee their ethical treatment by the film industry, something that we can do? Or in the eventuality that there is cruelty that is meted out on them, is there any redressal mechanism that's available?
So, see, the current provision of law or the current system in place is such that unless the film gets a NOC, no objection certificate, from the Animal Welfare Board of India, if it has used an animal in the movie, the movie will not get a certification from the CBFC, that is the Central Board of Film Certification. However, what we must remember is that an NOC may be obtained by giving a particular impression to the Animal Welfare Board of India while something else happening on the sets. And it is very likely, and I say so based on my experience. So all these, checks and balances in place are not sufficient. And I think they will never be sufficient with the kind of, greed that we have. We always want to maximize our profit. So producers or film bodies are least bothered about the kind of animals that come to the sets, whether they are healthy, not healthy, whether they are weak, whether they are sick. These are things we have brought to their attention and said, no, you cannot use these X set of animals. Ideally, no animal should be used. Why should an animal be used in a movie or in an ad or in a TV serial in today's day and age in 2022? And it is in the best interest of those, production houses and in the interest of animals that, live animals are not included in all of this. There is no way to ensure ethical treatment, in my opinion, unless you stop using them. That's the only way. Leave them alone is what I would say. That's the only way you can ensure that they are not tortured. Because while a particular producer may be empathetic to animals, he or she is not present on the sets every day to oversee what happens on the sets, what kind of treatment is meted out to animals. Okay, maybe none of the actors or nobody else on the sets will abuse the animal. But what if the owner himself is doing it because he wants the animal to perform a particular thing which is there in the script of the movie or the film? So maybe unknowingly the production house or the actors, etc., are not aware that to make the animal do X, the owner will be depriving the animal of food, etc., to basically make the animal give in, to make the animal do whatever the person wants the animal to do. So I think the best way, an escape out of all of this, is to stop using animals altogether. And it is very much possible. There are so many movies. If you Google online, unfortunately, I'm not a movie person, so I may not be able to name, but I do know of at least 6 or 7 movies which have been made without the use of animals, but it very much feels like they have used a live animal. So it is very much possible. It's not something that somebody will be trying for the first time. There are already people who have tried it. Now there is a producer, Pooja Bhatt. Her production house has, has pledged to not use live animals at all in making of films or anything that the production house produces. So that is a positive step. That is a very, very welcome step. And I hope that other producers and production houses will follow suit from what Pooja Bhatt's production house has done by pledging to not use live animals.
You're so right, sir. We actually don't even need to use animals to entertain people. We can just use VFX or CGI. And now moving on, most people may not even be aware that cruelty, abuse, and exploitation of these animals is even organized on a large scale. And this happens in the form of blood sports for entertainment or even gambling. And the most common forms of organized cruelty that we see are dogfighting, cockfighting, and hunting. So could you tell us about some of the instances where you've come across this?
On a regular basis, rather, very unfortunately on a regular basis. And not only one state, but all states. All states, there are cases reported from majority of states where very recently in Tamil Nadu, in Sivagangai district, there was a ram fighting organized on 8th of July. And we wrote to the police asking them to take cognizance and register an FIR in the matter, which was done promptly by the Sivagangai police, the district superintendent of police. But these instances happen all across India. In Maharashtra also, very recently, there was an incident reported where, bullfighting or, different types of animal fighting were organized. In Andhra Pradesh and Telangana during Makar Sankranti, there is cockfighting that is organized. In certain part of Northeast, there is fighting of a wild bird, which I am unable to recollect right now. But I'm sure if you look up online, you'll know what I'm talking about. So basically, no animal has been spared from this sort of torture. And what is sad is that the Supreme Court, despite upholding and recognizing the ban imposed by the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act for animal fighting in the statute, these acts continue to take place. In certain instances, with full knowledge of the district administration, in most cases without the district administration being aware. Wherever possible, whenever we have received prior information, we have worked with district authorities to ensure that these illegal events are totally stopped. They are not allowed to take place. And certain district administrations have very promptly responded. Some of them have not, and we have, got them to register a case. But with the Supreme Court in Animal Welfare Board of India's case versus A. Nagaraj and others, 2014, 7 February 2014 judgment, has recognized that animal fighting is an absolutely cruel sport, and there is no place for such a blood sport in today's day and age. This was in 2014. So many years have passed by. But despite that, we keep seeing that such events are organized. And again, I think it is the role of locals, where locals have to be more alert, have to be more proactive in reporting these instances. Thankfully, some people reach out to us and say, look, this is being organized, here is the poster. And like I said, we have been successful in stopping these events from taking place. But in most instances, we only get to know through, newspaper articles or some video we come across on YouTube, etc., where the event has already taken place. Those animals have already been subject to that kind of torture. So while, a criminal case will ensure that they are brought to justice, etc., the animal has already gone through, or those set of animals have already gone through that suffering, which is what we can prevent by making authorities aware, by alerting them in time.
So I think the bird that you were referring to that is organized for the fights must be the bulbul.
Yes, bulbul fighting. Correct. Thank you.
Yes,
yeah.
And
there is
also seen articles
some part of Northeast, right? It is organized. It is organized in a particular part of Northeast, if I'm not wrong.
Yes, sir. It's organized in the Northeast.
Right.
And so we've also read articles where to organize these fights and to get the animals in the mood to fight each other, they're even fed alcohol and other substances which sort of instigate them even further, which is, I think, very, very sad to see. And we need to educate people that in the name of culture or religion, we don't have to harm animals like this, because nowhere does it say that we actually need to do these things to be able to celebrate our religion or our culture and things like that. So coming to a topic which more and more people are now increasingly aware about, that is breeding. Mm-hmm. So we know that many people pay tons of money to purchase puppies, dogs, and cats, etc. from breeders, and many of them don't even possess a license for breeding. And what people don't actually realize is that they're contributing to a vicious cycle of cruelty that's being inflicted on these animals by breeders. So, sir, can you shed some light on the realities of breeding?
So the breeding industry is again another inherently cruel industry. And like I said, ethical breeder is a myth. It is not something that exists, or ethical meat shop or ethical pet shop or ethical whatever. Anything that is using animals can never be ethical. Why do I say so? I'll give the example about the current topic which you have asked a question on. Dog breeding as an industry has been thriving for many years. However, it came to be regulated by the central government only in the year 2017 in the form of dog breeding and marketing rules, which is a piece of legislation under the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act 1960, which makes it mandatory for all breeders. And when I say breeders, they even include traders, intermediate handlers, even somebody who is running a boarding facility for dogs, to be registered with the respective state animal welfare board, without which they cannot be in the business of breeding, which not only means actually breeding, but selling, being an intermediate agent, being a handler, whatever you are. The rules specifically define who a breeder is, and it is a vast definition which includes everybody, whosoever is into the business, right from the beginning till the end. Unfortunately, again, because of lack of reporting of such illegal breeding establishments by citizens, officials are unable to take action against such institutions. There is a mechanism in place. The dog breeding and marketing rules clearly specify the consequence of non-registration. And the State Animal Welfare Board, being the nodal agency or being the appropriate authority to regulate pet shops or breeders in the country, is the authority which must be informed of such illegal establishments so that action can be taken against them. Talking of the cruelty that takes place in these establishments, like I said, anything which has got to do with monetizing, or which is viewed with a monetary or an economic lens, one will try and monetize it more and more to make more and more profits. With that happening, the care, the kind of treatment that these dogs are subjected to is heartbreaking, to say the least. Many of them are abandoned when they can no longer be of use to the breeding industry by getting pregnant or delivering puppies. Many of them are abandoned when they are sick because breeders don't want to spend on their medical care. They are, the kind of treatment that puppies are subjected to, the conditions in which they are kept, filthy to say the least, which is why most puppies that are purchased from breeders suffer from gastro, parvo, or distemper-like diseases which are deadly, and 90% of these puppies do not survive and die a painful and slow death. Female dogs are made to stand on a rape stand, and they are forcefully impregnated by getting a male dog to hump on her. The more said, the less it will be to describe the cruelty that takes place in this industry. Giving live examples of cases that I have handled, dogs that I have rescued, as someone who used to rescue animals a few years ago. In Mumbai, there were spots where breeders would just abandon these pedigree breed dogs and go, either on the highway, or they would tie the dogs to the street lamp on the bridge. And in certain cases, when the leash was not strong enough, the dogs would try to, free themselves from the tethering, because they are not used to, the number of cars that are going past, the honking, being on an open highway like this. So many of them have got run over by cars and have died. So not only that, but like I said, we had also found a female Labrador, black color Labrador. I very specifically remember her case because it was one of the most heartbreaking cases that I have dealt with as a rescuer. She was lactating, which means probably the puppies were a month or so, or maybe even less. And perhaps the breeder realized that, she was not needed because he could give the puppies Lactol or whatever, failing to realize that the mother's milk is what builds immunity in those puppies. Nevertheless, he abandoned her when she had a deep wound on her tail and she was running temperature. And it was monsoon season at that time. She was lying unconscious near a pile of garbage on the street. Running temperature, her body temperature was high. She was unconscious. There was a wound that was being, infested by maggots, flies sitting on it constantly and laying more and more eggs. It was heartbreaking to witness that sight. And I think people who purchase these animals, knowingly or unknowingly, are responsible for these acts that take place. And these are not isolated incidences. These instances happen every single day in every place in this country. In fact, more so in places like Bangalore, Pune, etc., which are hubs for breeding, from where dogs are. Bangalore is such a big hub from where puppies are, sold across the country, sold to across the country. Even puppies that come to Mumbai, I've heard so many of them come from Bangalore, because once we had intercepted a bus which was carrying 4 or 5 puppies in the cargo section. Bangalore to Mumbai bus was intercepted. Those puppies were rescued. And this is not something which is a dark secret. But unfortunately, authorities have also failed these animals by not keeping a check on them. We are in 2022, 5 years since these rules, were notified. And yet there is very little that has been done to improve the plight of these animals. Thankfully, with states like Karnataka and Maharashtra and others having a state animal welfare board in place, there is something done, if not everything, or if not a lot that needs to be done. But there is much more that needs to be done in this area to help these animals. Puppy mills is one of the worst things that, and puppy mills are something which every breeder, and backyard breeding, all of these things, in fact, even inbreeding, meaning a litter of puppies which are born, male, female, they are actually brothers and sisters. But breeders even make them mate because that is the amount of, greed that is there in humans. And you cannot appeal to the, conscience of people like these who are using animals to monetize. They have 2 hands and 2 legs. They are healthy, yet they will not work but put animals to use and make money of them, and would want to live a very good lifestyle. And that, like I said, that greed. Today they have made 5,000 rupees. Tomorrow they would want to make 10,000, then 1 lakh, then 5 lakh. So with the greed increasing, obviously they will bring in more dogs for breeding, but also the space is limited. Today in X space, you have 5 dogs for breeding. Tomorrow you have 10 dogs in that same space. Then you have 20 in that same space. So there is overcrowding. There is no health, hygiene, sanitation. And even worse, when a country like India has so many homeless dogs, and we have so many cases of abandonment of pets, so many pedigree dogs in shelters, I fail to understand why would someone want to purchase an animal from a breeder and deprive animals in shelters and homeless animals the chance to find a home. After all, what you want is a dog. Whether you buy a dog or whether you rescue a dog or whether you adopt a dog, the dog is going to give you the same love. And by breeding dogs or breeding any animal for that matter, selling them, purchasing them, you are only depriving animals in shelters and homeless animals a chance to find a home. With more and more breeding, with more and more people wanting this Labrador puppies because of Charlie 777, the homes where these shelter dogs or these homeless dogs can go, number of homes is declining. Rather, it will further decline because some of these people are going to abandon these very dogs that they have purchased. So this vicious cycle is never ending unless we put an end to it. And there is a lot that needs to be done in terms of awareness. Speaking up for it. I have told my own friends off when they have told me, even if they have not liked it, because my allegiance is not first to friendship. It's first towards an animal which cannot speak. And if my friend is doing something which I feel and I know is wrong, and I'm informed about it, it is not just my personal opinion. It is based on facts and figures that are available on the internet. We must make an attempt to stop such people from making the wrong choice. That is the least we can do.
So also the point that you said that there's so many dogs already in shelters, but we still go and purchase dogs because, oh, we think that if we have a dog right from when it's a puppy, it'll be a good companion to our children or whatever. But when there's so many of these senior dogs that are being abandoned because, they're nearing the end of their life or they have so many health problems, it's important for us to realize that we should take them in and at least give them a happy few years of how much ever time they have left on their in their life. And also the point that you mentioned about inbreeding. So we know that because of inbreeding, there's so many health problems, etc., that can actually arise in the puppies. And because of those health problems and the fact that people don't want to spend time or money looking after these pets, they end up abandoning them again and again, furthering that vicious cycle that we're talking about.
Also, one more point that I forgot to add is about breeding altogether is wrong, but bringing more dogs with a stub nose like pugs, boxers, etc. to being is all the more cruel because they have inherent problems with breathing. Those dogs cannot be made to travel because of breathing issues that they go through, and this is something that has been created artificially. These breeds did not exist. They were created by humans by mixed breeding or whatever you want to call it, and not accidental mixed breeding, but one that has been done purposely.
Hey guys, really hope that you like this episode. Be sure to follow our Instagram page at rcl.tpc.
And stay tuned for many more such exciting episodes.